I'm absolutely honoured and thrilled to introduce our next speaker. Dr Heather Weiss is the co-director of the Global Family Research Project, which is a new non-profit organisation building a worldwide platform and networks to exchange the latest thinking, research and innovations around how families, schools and community organisations can work together and ensure all children get the learning opportunities in and out of school that they need to succeed. Heather has a wealth of knowledge and experience as a thought leader and an advocate for family engagement, and together with her colleagues, she established the Family Involvement Network of Educators, which was set up to provide the latest research, policy examples, professional development tools, evaluation, and other resources to support family and community engagement, practice and policy. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Heather Weiss.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here. Turn to slide 2 here. I want to thank ARACY for inviting me, the Smith family for the support that they've provided for this, and the Ian Potter Foundation for sponsoring this lecture. And it sounds like the possibility for people to be here. I've been here since actually Monday night and did a workshop and have been watching sessions, going to keynotes. And it's very clear from the buzz in the hallways and the conversation in the sessions, dinner conversations, that you're building a vibrant, engaged, and innovative learning community in this first meeting that ARACY has put together. And you're here doing the work of family engagement and building the platform for that here, and I would also argue contributing globally. I really needed my battery charged, coming from the United States, and more optimism in my optimism tank. You've really filled my optimism tank. It's been great to meet new people, hear about new ideas, new practices, listen to sessions and keynotes, have conversations in the hall, even a few in the ladies' room. So I think my bottom line is, coming from the situation that I come from, and trying to build a global platform for family and community engagement, I come away thinking that many people are building that platform, including all of you in this room. So thank you for the work that you do and for my being able to be here. The world's changing. This is a cartoon that describes it. There are many others. It's a new world, and that's where I'm starting from in this. It's a new world, and my talk is really about how family and community engagement is going to help build that new world for kids and families. This seems like a weird place to go. This is the funeral procession of the King of Tonga. Tonga is not too far from here. A friend of mine was in the Peace Corps there, and the king passed away, and she went to his funeral. This is the way some of the students who were waiting for the casket to go by were passing their time. Again, it's a new world. It's a new world of anywhere, anytime learning. So I want to take us traveling for just a minute. I was in Brazil, actually at a national park, and met an Australian woman and her mom. The woman worked for the Australian Embassy, and we got to talking about family and community engagement, and she mentioned a project that she and the American Embassy were supporting, small project, very rural Brazil, and they had a big screen out in the community with activities for kids aligned with their curriculum and the rest of it, sort of a remote learning possibility for people in a remote place. And when they went to visit it, they realized that everybody in the community was there in the early evening watching the material. And the grandmothers, the parents, everybody. And they said, this is really about not just learning for kids, but there's opportunities and obviously for family and community engagement. They were there, they were learning. They then used that as a platform to provide some ways that families could in fact support their kids' learning, and also some adult learning opportunities. So this is an example of where I think we're going, and that's to anywhere, anytime learning and lifelong learning. I was in Cambodia a year or two ago, and with money from the World Bank, Cambodia is implementing early home visiting to families to build family and community partnerships for learning. The bank in many places realized that early childhood services alone, without strong family and community engagement, weren't getting them where they wanted to go. So in places like Cambodia, they're now experimenting, and they're literally experimenting with a random controlled trial on visits to families to provide the support, information, the kinds of things that we do in family and community engagement. In Chile, there's a foundation, private foundation, that has invested in creating a very powerful, well-evaluated family and community engagement initiative, starting in the kindergarten and moving on through the elementary years of school. It includes a lot of things around how families can help their kids and support their learning and development, how they can partner with the teacher, and then how they can work with each other in a peer-to-peer learning and fun kind of way. I visited one of the schools that had this program, and one of the big things they told me about was a trip that they do twice a year with the moms, or the dads if they're available, they're often not, into Sao Paulo to visit museums and other kinds of things. Those moms had never been to nearby Sao Paulo. And from that, they began to build a pathway for themselves to go in and take their kids in to see some of the things in the city. Again, building pathways to anywhere, anytime learning. I was in China a couple of years ago, speaking for a very high-end private school. The people that can afford to send their kids there are very wealthy. They're working all the time. They don't have much engagement with their kids. The director of this school realized that was an issue. So she said part of the deal was that they had to come to the United States with their kids to a camp in the Adirondacks and go camping. The result of those 2 weeks were bonding, understanding their kids, understanding the ways they could support their kids. This is anywhere, anytime, sort of lifelong learning in a very different kind of a context. There's new research, a lot of new research now on what's called sort of joint media engagement. People looking at how we can use digital media to support interaction and learning. There's a new article out on Pokemon, which is a place-based mobile game that you go outside and find places and exercise and stuff. And what the report or the evaluation showed was that the parents valued playing together. It was more than Pokemon, it was playing together with their kids, having fun, bonding, and also co-learning. So the kids were teaching the parents some things, and the parents were teaching the kids some things. So part of our new landscape of learning, if you will, is the notion that we're having a lot more peer-to-peer, parents teaching children, but children teaching parents. We have a leveler playing field, I think, than we've had in the past. So bottom line here is we're moving to a world where we're really now trying to build, I think, anywhere, anytime learning and lifelong learning. I want to I'm starting the Global Family Research Project. I've been trying to understand where does family and community engagement fit in against a lot of our biggest global problems. And I've been thinking and reading a lot to try to understand those challenges and again, where we fit. One of the people I turn to is Tom Friedman, who's a columnist for The Times, written many books. You may know his book, The World is Flat. He put one out late last year called Thank You for Being Late, How to Remain an Optimist in the Age of Acceleration. And he lays out 3 challenges: global warming, how we deal with diversity and inclusion in an increasingly diverse world where we need inclusion and to be able to work effectively with each other. And then the 3rd challenge was the challenge of the ways in which digital media, the web, all of the phenomenon, the bots, the algorithms, all of the work that's happening now, really changing the landscape of learning and of employment broadly, are affecting the way we think about learning and education. And I want to give you the case of AT&T. AT&T's business model changed with the supernova, changed dramatically. The CEO of the company realized that they needed workers with different skills and they needed a smaller, smarter workforce. So they made a deal. They said, if you stay and upgrade your skills, we will provide affordable degrees. We'll give you up to $8,000 a year for courses, and we'll give you $30,000 across your lifetime here to continue to upgrade your skills. They did partnerships with Georgia Tech and some online learning platforms to tailor things so people were getting bachelor's and master's as employees of AT&T. They developed a new social contract. You can be a lifelong employee if you're ready to be a lifelong learner. So it's in that spirit that I think a lot about, this is the future. It isn't the future, it's right now. Anywhere, anytime learning, and the need to be lifelong learners requires a learning mindset and the capacity to navigate these accelerating changes. I think this is what families and communities face, and I believe family and community engagement is key in helping navigate these very important and life-changing changes. Family and community engagement, all of you, all of us, are on the front lines of some of the biggest global challenges. The transition to anywhere, anytime learning, the challenges of valuing diversity and building inclusion, and the challenge of reducing growing economic inequality and growing inequalities in learning opportunities. What's family and community engagement 2.0, 3.0 going to look like? My presentation is not going to give you the answer. There isn't one. 2.0 is being created now, and you're part of creating it. We're moving to design, I think, beginning to put some of the contours of 3.0 together, and I think the presentation we just heard is a big part of that. So my presentation is designed to get you thinking, talking, having ideas in the shower, seeing existing anywhere learning opportunities in your community, maybe helping to build some. And I see you guys as players in this, I see all of us as players in this new game. So what I'm going to do is broaden the lens beyond family and community engagement in school to say we need to now be thinking about it more broadly. It's not to say family engagement in school is not at the heart of this or a key part of it. It certainly is. But I want us to take a little time to broaden the lens and think about what the larger landscape of learning looks like, is becoming, and could be. So I'm going to start by redefining family engagement within that anywhere, anytime learning frame, lay out some of the key challenges, and envision and describe some of the efforts people are making to address the challenges. Then I'm going to focus on really trying to find, I'm going to name two, but I'll bet you guys will find many others, high leverage opportunities to build family and community engagement pathways. Learning pathways across time and place and communities with thick family engagement, and learning for both kids and families, and learning for kids and families together. So this is going to be a fast trip through a PowerPoint that's long. It'll be available as the previous speakers was, so forgive me for zooming really quickly. We're in the shift now to anywhere, anytime learning. We know there's lots of evidence from this from lots of places. Children and youth, in fact, all of us learn anywhere, anytime, not just in school. We have a broad ecology of learning. You guys can fill in lots of other circles. People are inventing them and connecting them as we speak. School is important, healthcare, social service, after-school programs, museums, libraries, higher ed, families. Think for a minute about all the places you learn, all the places in your community where people learn. We have a broad learning ecology, and I think as family and community folks, we are beginning to build links among those things to build out this broader anywhere, anytime learning ecology and build pathways. So we, with Karen Mapp and others in a working group on family and community engagement a few years ago, developed a new kind of operating definition for family engagement. It's all the things families do to support children's learning and development from birth on, anywhere, anytime. We built out family engagement as a shared responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of families, it's the responsibility of communities to support that family engagement. It's a shared responsibility. In Tim's terms, it's a relationship, and we both have responsibility for that, both as individuals and as organizations and as communities. Family engagement happens across settings, and it happens continuously over time. So on Tuesday, I did a design thinking workshop with a wonderful group of people to think about how to build anywhere, anytime learning and connections amongst all the places children learn as part of the transition to school. So that the transition wouldn't just be to school, it would be with families connecting to all of the, or many of the places you saw on that set of circles as part of the transition to school. And with design thinking, and my slides will be up with lots of resources if you're interested in this, with design thinking, which is kind of a co-design, bringing diverse perspectives together to converge on an idea, people in the group put together different prototypes, and they have to be things you make, draw, make, or whatever, of what it would look like. This was one of them, and if you look, I don't know if you can see, but in the upper left-hand corner, it says, this is a place for adults to learn. And over in the right-hand corner is the coffee pot with both decaf and regular coffee. I point this out because you can see the kids, but there's also a space there for adult learning, lifelong learning, and a commitment to that. The big welcome sign banner. This is the kind of sort of visualization people were doing of what this would look like. So come on, come in, you see a welcome. So this was an attempt to create a welcoming place for families to work with their kids, but also for some learning on their own. So we're visualizing, we're co-designing. So 40 years of research tell us family engagement is a very powerful predictor of school and life success. So when you think of yourselves as working in your community, in your country, and globally to help one of the most powerful forces, if not the most powerful force in kids' lives, prosper. You are the people that are helping the families that are so important to kids. You saw the testimony from the kids. I can give you years of research that testify to the same thing. You're in that very powerful position of helping to shape it. We know family engagement is important anywhere, anytime, not only in school, but in all those places. It's critical for helping all children and families access all learning opportunities from birth through secondary school and beyond. I'm just reading a business plan for my 30-year-old daughter, or 33-year-old daughter, continues if you're lucky. It's not an event, an ongoing process, and we know it's lower for families impacted by income, racial, and ethnic inequities and immigrant status. So I want you guys to think of yourselves as you are. Again, I mentioned I've been looking for guidance myself on what it means to be global and what it means to try to be part of global leadership in family and community engagement. And I came on this book, which I highly recommend. It's by a professor who's part of a team at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, really looking at a different kind of leadership, the kind of leadership we need now. And when I read the book, I read it for myself and thought about it, I thought, this is what people in family and community engagement are doing. We are crossing boundaries, building bridges, and leading change. So, quoting from the book, in crossing boundaries, you must get groups, often with big differences and competing cultural narratives, to come together to appreciate the systemic nature of the problem, build a relational bridge, and adjust their values, practices, and priorities on behalf of adaptive change. That's what you're doing. That's what family and community engagement is, and it's going to be even more important to bring the skills you have to bear as we try to build this anywhere, anytime, and lifelong learning. So as leaders, I think we also have to deal with, and this is American data, I assume something like this must exist here, on the equity gap in anywhere, anytime learning. So if we open the lens beyond school, we see the difference between the more economically advantaged and the economically disadvantaged in terms of access to key anywhere, anytime learning resources. The parents of the more economically advantaged parents are spending 220 hours more in reading and those kinds of things. The kids are getting access to preschool. They're getting access to after-school and extracurricular activities, summer learning, field trips. That all adds up to a 6,000-hour learning gap, basically between the rich and the poor. So we have to be paying attention as we build anywhere, anytime, and lifelong learning to equity. This is data from the United States on, again, by economic status, spending on enrichment. This has now come up at the policy level, risen to the policy level, at least in some places in the United States, that it is the non-school learning opportunities that are a big part of the achievement gap, the education achievement gap in the United States. And people are recognizing it's the capacity to make sure everybody gets the things I showed you on the previous slide that are in fact going to lead to better learning outcomes for everybody. So think about things in terms of time. The kids have 6,000 hours of wake time. About 1,000 hours are spent in school. That's 5,000 available hours to impact, educate, and enhance the learning of kids. Huge amount of time is out of school. What are we doing with that time? That's the anywhere, anytime learning time that you guys, I think, have huge contributions to make in terms of your knowledge and skills and acquainting families with these kinds of things, but also helping within communities to build bridges across learning experiences with thick family engagement around the community. This vision, and we're sort of working on it at the project, is beginning to think about pathways that begin for families with early home visiting programs and other kinds of things, early childhood classes that engage families, after-school programs, STEM, teen clubs. It's a pathway. And when we envision this with some of the work we're doing now to try to literally draw it, you've got these kinds of opportunities for kids. You've got community organizations linking together to create these learning pathways, and there's a sheath of thick family engagement around it. So I encourage you to think and visualize what you think it looks like. This is, again, look like. This was from a design thinking thing we did in Karen's PPE a year or two ago, asking people to think about the transition to school as more than just school and visualize it. So you have the school in the center, but then you have a huge array of other places. And what they did in their idea was to link it together with this passport to kindergarten. And families and kids would go to each of these places, the park, the library, other places, remember, for anywhere, anytime learning in the community, and check off get a stamp in their passport and turn that in for free books and other kinds of things. So part of this is imagining what this is all going to look like and creating it. So I'm urging you to imagine and create. This is anywhere, anytime learning on the subway. President Obama put money into the Early Learning Challenge to try to do really innovative things in early learning with an emphasis on family engagement. This came out of a grant to the state of Massachusetts that brought the early childhood people, after school people, our Mass Bay Transportation Association or Authority and other people together, and resulted in things like building your brain on the train, parent engagement activities on the subway on the way to work. Again, using imagination. This is from Cape Town, Johannesburg, South Africa. The library there came up with the idea of putting books and a librarian in the laundromat where there are lots of kids and families. Again, go where the kids and families are as you build the anywhere, anytime learning pathway. Go to them, think about where they are. This is an amazing project in New York City. This is going beyond the usual suspects to build bridges among community learning settings. The Pinkerton Foundation, with the library as the anchor institution, has put together a 3rd grade through 6th grade literacy pathway. It begins with family engagement and early childhood and literacy activities with extensive family engagement, the kinds of things I suspect a lot of you are doing. Continues on in the transition to school. When kids get to school, The school is working on literacy and engaging families around it. After-school programs are working on literacy, and the older kids in after-school are mentoring the younger kids, and older people in the community are coming in to contribute in after-school and in other organizations with the community to enrich the literacy skills of the kids to create this pathway. Their goal, and the school is heavily involved in this, but it's all these other parts that are coming together. It literally linked together intentionally to make sure that by 5th grade, every child in a set of schools in some of the poorest parts of New York are in fact literate and able to succeed with that literacy. So we look a lot at what families say. We need information. This is a picture of a researcher at Harvard, an amazing man who is a behavioral economist, one of the pioneers in behavioral economics. And he talks about bandwidth. It goes back to the neuroscience and the fact that, you know, with all the things that families and all of us are trying to do, sometimes we have a narrower bandwidth. And that means, yet again, that we need to be providing accessible, understandable, and actionable information to families. Again, meeting them where they are, which is, you know, stressed with less time than we would like. So this is an example of doing that. And again, it's part of the transition to school. In Cambridge, where I live, there's a family council. And they, you know, engage families in a variety of ways and do a lot of the policy planning, connecting and building the family engagement pathways within the city of Cambridge. So a parent came to that group and said, look, you know, you guys talk about the transition to school, but it isn't just a transition to school. I need childcare. You know, I work. It's a transition to after school. What can you do to help me? So what they did was they got a group of parents together, early childhood providers, teachers and folks from the schools, and also after-school folks, to come up with this 4-page brochure, which is included as part of the transition to school about after school. It talks about the importance of after school, what to look for to find a good one, where you find good ones in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and how you can maybe get some subsidies to help you get there. So again, this is a reframing away from family engagement and the transition to school to say, this is about creating a pathway. Now in doing this, people that had not worked together in the organizations that put this together built relationships and have been doing other similar kinds of things. So it had impact for parents. It also had impact in terms of creating relationships in the community. This is another really good example of a pathway. This is done by New Visions in New York. The head of New Visions until a year ago left New Visions to become in charge of all of the work on education at the Gates Foundation. And I'm hoping he will bring this kind of thinking to Gates. So New Visions is a school support organization in New York, works with schools. Their goal is to have every kid graduate high school and be on the path to some kind of post-secondary education. Then they put together a pathway approach to get there with parent involvement as a key part of it. So if you look at this, you'll see on the left the benefits for teachers. Understand that with the benefits of family engagement, this is a family engagement pathway to keep kids on the pathway through school and into college or some kind of post-secondary training. The teachers will understand college readiness benchmarks and positive interaction with parents and students, feeling supported by parents, all those kinds of things. So again, here's the benefits for the teachers. Here's the benefits for the parents. Understand college readiness benchmarks. Better able to monitor students' progress and to support their college and career aspirations. Collaborate with teachers. You can see them. Benefits for students. Then the school level capacity building, the parents, students, supports, and resources. This is an amazing configuration of things that puts family and community engagement as a key component of that pathway. Now, this is their data dashboard. This is their visual New Visions tracker. Couple of key indicators. A parent can get this regularly. A parent can look at it. Green is obviously things are going pretty well. Yellow is there may be a problem. So I, as a parent, get a sense of, is my kid going to school? Are they taking the courses and passing them, et cetera. Again, great way, if we think about what parents need, information in a in an accessible, comprehensible, and actionable format. This stuff is coming out regularly. If the kid is missing school, you know it. You've got the chance to do something about it and the resources to help you do it. On the back, and this is one thing I love, on the lower right, it says, this young person to stay on track needs to do some things. On some of these things, it will talk about not just credit recovery kinds of programs, but also after-school activities that build their skills. So this is an ongoing thing where we're not just school-centric. We're saying what else outside the school is going to be available to help the kids stay on track. So we look for high-leverage family and community engagement opportunities to build family and community engagement. And we centered on the transition to school in our work. Our website is full of resources on this around family and community engagement. So we've reframed the transition as a shared responsibility among families, early childhood programs, schools, after-school providers, and many other organizations in the community. You saw them previously in that map with the passport. It's a move not just into school, but into different learning settings in and out of school, different learning settings in and out of school. You can support your child's development and learning in and out of school. It's a process, not just a one-time event. It's an opportunity to build strong and continuing family and community engagement pathways to support children's learning in and out of school. Transitions are a moment when people pay attention. They do at New Visions on the transition into high school. They do in the entry to school. This is a time when people will come together to create and do new things and create those kinds of pathways. And they're key opportunities for building and strengthening family and community engagement. We know the transition's a matter of equity. And you saw my equity chart. We need to be helping people transition not just to school, but to being able to access all those other learning opportunities. Families are key. There's data, much research that shows kids whose families are engaged around the transition do better in school. Transition beginning not just in the moment of walking in the school door, but a year or two before and continuing on into early elementary school. It's all about relationships, Tim's point, among families, early childhood providers, schools, and communities. And the smooth transition really makes a difference for kids' learning and development. So we're trying to move in our thinking, again, from a school-centric framework to an anywhere, anytime learning framework. From school and readiness focused, a lot of transition is on school and readiness. Institution-centered, school, and siloed, it's the school. To a focus beyond the school, the child, and the curriculum, a user human-centered approach where people are helping to co-create the transition, and where it's integrated and focused again on anywhere, anytime learning pathways. So we put together for a number of groups, but including the PPs that Harvard does, a design thinking exercise that allows you with design thinking to harness diversity and build inclusion. Design thinking is a process of bringing diverse people together to collectively generate new and potentially more effective user-centered ideas and solutions. Tim had it on his list. This is penetrating everything. It's in the Global Leadership book I showed you. Companies are using it. This whole user-centered approach, start where they are, engage them, not just to hear what they want, but also in the design process, is beginning to really change the way we do business in lots of different places. So we challenged the group here, as we do typically, to build a prototype. Come up, put out a bunch of ideas on the table, center on one you think will work, and then build a prototype of it. Your prototype has to engage all types of families, include coordination among diverse stakeholders, build new or existing pathways across time, and go beyond the usual suspect. That's where we get people bringing in the barbershop and the beauticians as a stop on the transition to school. Barbershops and beauticians enlisted to put out books and talk to folks about kindergarten registration. Again, really amazing creative ideas come to play. This is our group the other day that came up. One of the prototypes was the little class or the little school model you saw. The one in the middle with the yellow triangles is a good food pathway. They riffed off the idea of creating a pathway around the community to create awareness of nutrition and help fill lunch boxes with nutritious food. And you can use the supermarket with kids to count things, to number, to read, et cetera, et cetera. So thinking of food broadly and a food pathway as part of the transition. There were a lot of very clever ideas. When I get home, I have my notes about them. I'm going to write them up and blog about them. Last place we're looking now is public libraries. This is a publication we just did. We did a call to action with the Public Library Association in the United States last year, calling them to continue and to enrich and build their family and community engagement within libraries. This is an idea book that just came out that lays out a framework I'll show you and has many, many ideas, really innovative, interesting ideas of things libraries are doing within the library, ways they're reaching out to engage other partners in the community. Again, they are committed not only to bringing families into the library, but helping connect themselves and connect families to all kinds of learning opportunities, including schools. Why libraries matter? I keep pushing on equity. Equity is real important. They matter. This is data that suggests or shows that families who are from low-income homes use the library at a high rate compared to other community spaces. I don't know if that's true here. It's true in the United States. So you can see, beyond attending a religious event, the second most frequented thing was the library. They are a place where people often feel comfortable going and where they will get the resources they need, both for themselves and for their kids. Librarians are interested. We did a big national survey of what libraries are doing and what librarians are interested in. The top 3 family engagement interests are making the library a welcoming and safe space for families. Goes back to that prototype you saw that we built on Tuesday, creating welcoming spaces for everybody, safe and welcoming spaces. They're particularly safe for new immigrant families with the challenges they're facing. Help families feel confident in supporting their children's learning and development, and support them in technology use. We have many frameworks. I love Karen's framework. When we build frameworks, we try to think about how do we align our framework with other people's frameworks. So you'll see a lot of what Karen has done here in this framework. We built a framework for the National Head Start Family and Community Engagement effort. There's a lot of that in this. So I think to the extent that we can in the family and community engagement space, building frameworks, but having key themes that run across all of them is important. So I won't go through this except to say, take a look at it if you're interested in it. It really does lay out what families will do, or libraries will do in that below the circles, and it's all the kinds of things we talk about in family and community engagement. We're seeing libraries reach out to family and community engagement folks for advice on folks in this room about how do we better engage families. So I want to end by saying you guys are leaders. Create possibility. Start imagining, start connecting, start building anywhere, anytime learning. Build your professional capacity. You've heard a lot about that. Secure resources, and then the try it, see if it works. If it doesn't, try it again, kind of cycle that we all talk about. This is the last slide from our workshop. This was after we'd all done our prototypes and we were debriefing on how it worked, how we could do it better, et cetera. One woman, who I hope is here, 2 women actually put together this. It's called, you know what, this is not rocket science, we can do it. Thank you.